Hello, everybody. Really nice to see you all. Thank you for taking the time out of school to come and talk to me.
Always.
And today is a special day, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
International Women's Day.
Yes.
Every year on the 8th of March, it's celebrated all around the world. Not just here, but everywhere around the world. Women are celebrating and standing up and talking about all the positive achievements of women and girls, but also talking about what more needs to be done to bring more equality and empowerment for women and girls like yourself who've got your whole future ahead of you, starting to think about what you can do, what you want to do, and how you can achieve it. It's so important to start thinking about that and not let anyone stop you from what you want to achieve. I was in Parliament. Today we're not in Parliament, but I was yesterday, and we had a big debate, as we do every year, on International Women's Day. And mostly women actually take part, but there were some men as well who were allowed to take part, I think. And we just talked about what needs to be done, you know, for women and what achievements. We talked about global affairs, you know, globally, women still struggling in many countries. For things like equality, for, you know, good healthcare services, things that we take for granted in this country. And we are lucky to live here. But there are many women around the world who are struggling, women and girls who don't have the, you know, the health service or the right to education or the right to be safe and free from violence. So we talked about that, but then we talked about how in this country, women and girls have got now more protection from violence, from domestic violence or stalking, or the new bill that came through recently that stops people if they try to take photographs with your mobile up your skirt, upskirting bill. That is now a criminal offence. They can go to jail for that. So there's all sorts of protections, but mainly they were women in Parliament who fought for those protections. And that's why we need more women in politics to fight for these things, because, you know, when women get involved, we make a difference, because we know what it's like, obviously, to be a woman, and we know the sort of issues that women care about. So we talked about that a lot. And one of the things that we still need to do more is to have more representation of women in our Parliament. It's only, I was looking at the figures actually, there's 208 women MPs out of 650, I think it is. That's only 32%, and that's a record high. So only 32%. And in the House of Lords where I am, we're only 26%. So only 1 in 4, roughly, are women. So we have to work extra hard to make our voices heard. So you understand how important it is that your voice, all of you, each and every one, your voice matters, and what you have to say and what you believe in is really important. And don't ever be afraid to voice your opinion, your views, or ask questions. And if you're interested in the future in going into public life, into politics, maybe be a local councillor or get involved in your school, whatever it is that you do have in your school council, if you have that, don't be afraid to do that. Because women, you know, us girls, you know what we do? We sit back and we wait for someone to ask us. The boys don't do that. They put themselves forward. Straight away, they put themselves forward because they think they're, you know, I can do this. Whereas women, oh, I'm not sure if I can do this. We're not sure about ourselves. We need to be more sure and more confident, a bit more assertive as well, and believe in ourselves. You all have to believe in yourself. So that's my introduction to you.
How did you become a politician? And what was my other question? What was it? I had another question, but I forgot. But yeah, how did you?
Sorry, you might come back to it.
Yeah, how did you become a politician?
Well, it was a bit of an accident, really. Years ago, I was involved in my children's school. I was a governor, and they asked me if I wanted to become a governor first. So I said yeah. And I got quite involved. And then somebody said, well, you've got council elections coming up. Would you like to be a councillor? Because you seem to be interested in schools and education. And I did exactly what I just told you, because I was a lot younger. I said, oh, I'm not sure. I don't know if I can do that. And a few people said, no, you should do it. So I went along, and then I eventually ended up being elected as a local councillor on the council. And you know what the councillor does? councillors are responsible for all your budget, your schools, for education and social services, the parks. You think about it, everything, leisure services, that's everything, that's all controlled by the local council. So people think that's not important, but do you know how important that is? So I got involved in that. That's how I got involved, and I was a councillor for 16 years in Hackney and Islington. And after that, I found myself, I didn't plan it, but that's the way it was. I got involved in politics, really. I found it very interesting. I mean, because you can make a difference to people's lives.
Did you enjoy it?
I did, not always. Sometimes it's a bit, it can get a bit rough, political arguments and things. But, you have to be a little bit tough, and you mustn't let other people block you. So if you want to achieve something, if you believe in something, you've got to go for it. So I got involved locally, in my local community first. And then I became a councillor, and then progressed to, I went to school in Hackney. I went to primary school, secondary school, and then I went first to art college, because I was intending to be an artist. So I did that for a while, but I couldn't really, after I came out, I didn't really earn a living. So I started working in libraries. I got a job in libraries, so I always loved books, and I love reading. So I got a job in the libraries, and I did that for some time. I really enjoyed that. And I got into local government. And then that's why I got involved in the community, doing community work. So yeah, I kind of had I didn't plan it, but I wish I had planned my life a bit better now. But I managed to find my way, and then I went to work in the health service. And when I went to work in the health service, I went and took a degree at university, because I hadn't trained as somebody to work in the NHS. So I was supported, the NHS supported me to go back to university and take a degree, which I did, in healthcare. And I did that for about 8 years. But then I became a full-time, I was running in the council in Islington. I was in charge of social services and health services for the whole borough. And I did that full-time, really, because that was a full-time job. So that's what I've done, yeah. Very different, a bit different from what many people... Well, you've heard of lords. You know what a lord is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Baroness is the female equivalent. Okay. It's the same. So lords are men and baronesses are women. Yeah. And what happens in the House of Lords is that you are given the title through the... you're nominated, you're not elected. We're not elected because in Parliament we have two houses. You have the House of Commons, where the MPs are, they're elected. And then you have the House of Lords, which is the second chamber. And where our job is to scrutinise the laws that come from the House of Commons. So we're appointed, and we're appointed through the Queen. So the Queen has to make the appointments and appoint you and give you a title. And once you have a title, you can choose your title. So I'm Baroness Hussein, which is Hussein-Ece, which is my family name, and I took the title of Highbury. This is where I live. But you can be Baroness of anywhere or Lord of anywhere. There's people from all over the country. And you sit in the House of Lords and you make laws, really. And you sit in it for life, for the rest of your life if you want to. Until, you leave. You can leave if you want, you can retire. But you're appointed for life. It's called a life peerage. And then women have only been in the House of Lords. I mean, the House of Lords have been in existence for hundreds and hundreds of years, but women were never allowed to be in the House of Lords until 1958. So it's only 60 years ago that women were allowed to sit in the House of Lords, because it was all men. So that's why there's so few of us. It's taken a long time to get to 26%. But the women are hardworking, I think, are very active, and we all work together. We're all in different political parties, but we work together on issues that we care about. Okay. So that's how I got to the House of Lords. I never imagined one day that I would ever be in the House of Lords, but it's a really big privilege to be there.
Okay. So along your journey, to be part of the Parliament, do you think has anything specifically be said to push you down or knock down your confidence to make you regret your decisions?
Did anything push me down?
Yeah,
discourage.
Oh.
Discourage. Did anything discourage you?
Well, there, you get a lot of people trying to discourage you along the way. There'll always be people trying to, say things to discourage you or be a bit critical. I think when you're a woman and you come from an ethnic minority like I do, my family are Turkish Cypriot background. I was born in London, so there's always going to be people that are not going to be very helpful. But there's also going to be a lot of people that are going to support you, which is good. But you know what? You have to decide what you want to do, and whatever you do in life, it doesn't have to be politics. There'll always be some people who are a little bit sort of discouraging, but you'll find there are people who will help you and support you, and you focus on them. You just ignore the others because it's not important. Because you know in your heart or in your mind what you want to do, and that's the most important. It's your life. You're planning things for your future, what you want to do. So who cares what they say? I used to get upset years ago when I was younger, when people, they'd say, I don't know if you should do that. Oh, do you think you're up to it? And I used to get a bit worried. I think, oh, maybe I'm not. But as you get older, you think, I don't really care what they think. I'm doing this because I believe in it. So you have to believe in what you're doing. You have to believe in yourself. And don't let other people discourage you. You've got an ambition, whatever it is you want to do, whatever it is, doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be politics, politics can be hard. It's a bit of a rough place, politics, male dominated. You've probably seen on Parliament the way they all shout at each other.
Yeah.
You can't be sort of a bit, a shrinking violet. You can't sort of, you've got to be a little bit tough and have a slightly thicker skin, which you grow over the years. What's your name? Stephanie.
I
Hi.
want to know, what were the struggles you had to face because you were a woman and you wanted to enter into politics?
Oh, all sorts of things, some of them are silly, but, at the time, years ago, I remember that when I was a councillor, I first became a councillor, and I was not agreeing with the men that were in charge of the council, and I was quite new. I remember there was a time when they were trying to cut services, it was nursery services, and I said, I don't agree with this. Why are we doing this? Why are we cutting nurseries? This is in Hackney, a very poor borough, where people need nurseries. And they all went mad. Said, you can't object, you can't question this decision, we're going to take this in. And I said, well, I'm questioning it, because I don't understand why we're doing it. Can somebody explain it to me? This is in a committee. And there was a big row, and the chair of the committee took me aside and tried to tell me off and say, you can't do that, you've got to follow the line. And I said, you know what, I didn't become elected to follow your line and to close down nurseries. And he went mad and started shouting at me. And I said, I don't care. I said, you can shout at me as much as you want. I said, it doesn't bother me. I said, I can shout louder than you. And I did. I told him to shut up. And you know what he did? They reversed it. They reversed it. Because no one had ever objected before. Everyone said, oh no, we've got to go along with it. Got to go along with it, because people are too afraid or worried. So I've had a few fights like that, behind the scenes, not in public. But you have a few fights and you have to be a bit tough. But, I've always believed that if I believe in something, if I believe it's right, I will fight for it. If I'm not sure, I'll wait and see, I'll ask a bit more, I'll find out. But don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. If you believe in something, you stand up for that. Don't let anyone else tell you you're wrong if you believe in it. And don't let anyone tell you to do things that you believe are wrong. I just found it very difficult to go along with things like cutting nurseries, or because I believe passionately in, education and funding education properly. I always thought we should be investing in education, not cutting it back. So that's one example. There have been many others, where they've tried to say things like, oh, she's just a woman. What's her name? Hi.
Yeah.
What would you like to ask me?
So, how do you make laws?
How do
How do you make laws?
Yeah.
Well, it's a bit complicated, but the Parliament, because we've got people who work in Parliament, the committee, civil servants behind the scenes, they draw up, say, the government. What happens when you have an election? The government, the party who stands for government in a general election, they have something called a manifesto. They say, we're standing on this. This is, if you elect us, this is what we're going to do. So, for example, there might be a bill on, a new education bill, or there's been a new crime bill to try and, prevent crime. So what they do is they draw up, if they win, they get the civil servants to draw up a bill, a document, to say this is what we want to achieve. So, for example, they might want more police in different areas, or they might want to make certain things illegal. You know, like knife crime, for example, is a big issue, isn't it? So they can actually say, well, on knife crime or gun crime, we're going to increase it so courts can jail people for 5 years. Or do you know what I mean? They give, so it's what's called a framework, and they put together a bill, and it's published, and then it goes before Parliament where it's debated. So the whole of Parliament, the House of Commons, the MPs, they debate the bill, and what you can do is amend it. You can say, well, actually, that bit's not very good. I'm going to put an amendment down to improve it. For example, there might be better protection for women, or, giving more powers to different cities around, because don't forget, it's for the whole country, it's not for London. So they can give more powers to different cities as well to recruit more police officers if they need it. I'm just giving you a rough example. And then once the House of Commons has debated it, it comes to the House of Lords for its second reading, so it goes for another reading. It's a long process for a bill. It takes months and months. So you have days and days of debating it in Parliament, then it comes to the House of Lords where it's looked at again. Our job is sometimes the bills that come through are really not very good. So we have to make them better. And then when we've improved it, we send it back to the Commons, and then they go through it again. And eventually, when everyone's agreed, it's called royal assent. So it goes to the Queen, and the Queen has to sign it off. So it's called royal assent. So in other words, royal permission. So she sort of signs it off and says, yes, this has become law now, and it goes on the statute book. So it becomes the law. So in other words, the police, if anyone breaks the law, they're breaking that law because it's a new law. And that's how it's made, laws. It's not an easy process, it's a long process, but it means that everyone has a good look at it to make sure the laws, it's a good law, not a bad law. Because sometimes you can make a law, but when it comes into practice, it's not very good law. It's very hard then for it to be implemented. So that's how laws are made. So it's very important what we do. It's important that what I was saying to you earlier, that we have enough women, people from different backgrounds. Not all people who've been to private schools or posh people, frankly. We need people from all backgrounds who understand what the world is like, what your lives are like, what everyone's life is like, and how it's going to affect you before we make the laws. So that's why I'm very keen when I say that we need more diversity in Parliament. That's why we need more diversity, because everyone understands what their community go through, rather than just all men, which is what it used to be for hundreds of years, of course, all men, all white men, all very wealthy, well-off people. So it's not like that now, it's changed a lot. People can actually talk about their own experiences from their own communities and change the law.
Thank you.
Welcome. Martha, what would you like to ask me?
Is it hard being a female politician?
Can be at times. There's still a bit of sexism. Where I'm, especially in the House of Lords, they're a lot older. The average age is about 70. So, some of them, most people are very polite and very good-mannered, but occasionally if they don't agree with you and you're talking, they can barrack you, heckle you. And what happened to me the other day, actually. I was asking a question and I started getting heckled by all these men. But I just kept going. So it can be hard, and especially now, I don't know if you're reading, there's been a lot of, because of Brexit, which has been a big problem, a nightmare. I'm opposed to Brexit, I think it's a bad idea. But anyway, that's ongoing. We still haven't decided what we're going to do. But a lot of women MPs are getting a lot of abuse on social media, on Twitter and so on. So, there's been a big discussion about that, and the police have been outside Parliament more to try and keep everyone safer, because there's been some threats. It's been a bit unpleasant. I think it's brought out the worst in people. Sometimes it can be difficult, but you can't give in to that kind of thing, because we live in a democracy. We can't allow people who are threatening, going to threaten women to get away with it. We can't let them win. So we have to be quite tough. We're lucky that we're protected. We have police, a lot of police around Parliament and inside. They protect us, look after us. But we have to be sensible as well when we're going out and about. You know, you have to be a little bit sensible as well. Just don't put yourself in any position where you might be, you know, it might be a threat to you. You have to be a little bit careful. But on the whole, I've never felt unsafe. I've always felt, you know, I've never thought, oh my God, I don't feel safe. No, not at all. Hi, what's your name?
Hermione.
Hermione, hello.
So you talk in Parliament. Is there a specific subject you only talk about, or do you like talk about everything?
Well, I speak a lot on equalities. That's my title. I'm an equality spokesperson. So I speak a lot about race equality, gender equality, people with disabilities, that sort of thing, LGBT. That's my area. But of course, that cuts across everything, doesn't it? So if you look at equalities, it matters, like race equality, gender equality. It matters in education, in health, in employment, everywhere. It makes a difference. So, for example, the other day there was questions about, we've had International Women's Day, talking about how women need more support, for example, if once they've had children, you know, with childcare to help them get back into work, and how difficult that can be. So I can speak on that. I can talk about ethnic minorities, how it's difficult for a lot of ethnic minorities to, you know, get into senior jobs. You know, like for example in the NHS. If you go to, and I know you've been into, I don't know, hospitals, clinics, you'll see that most of the staff are from abroad. They're not all white English. We have a lot of mix, don't we? But it's important as well that everyone has especially women, get into the senior jobs, the managerial jobs as well. So I talk on that as well. So I do speak on a range of issues. I'm just trying to think now, I'm on one blank, I'm trying to think of it. But I do speak on all sorts of issues, sort of health, education, employment, sometimes women in prisons I've spoken on. I believe that women are more harshly treated when it comes to sentencing, and it has a bigger impact on them. A lot of the women who end up in courts have got drug problems or been in violent relationships or got mental health problems, and they get into crime. But inevitably, if the judge gives them a sentence rather than a fine, if they go to prison, what happens to their children? A sentence rather than a fine. If they go to prison, what happens to their children? Babies and children end up going into care, which costs a fortune, and it's not good for the families. So I talk on things like that as well. So I talk on a range of issues. Are there any issues that you're particularly interested in?
It was mainly equality with women and men, so that's why.
Yeah. Well, I do talk on that a lot. I gave a speech yesterday, actually, in the House of Lords, and I talked about how women, particularly from ethnic minorities, are discriminated, face discrimination more. It's harder for them to get in, you know, they might go to university, get a good job, but they're finding it harder to get into the good, professional, managerial jobs as well. So there's a lot of work going on. There's a lot of work, and I think the government and agencies are very conscious that they want more women in these senior jobs, you know. So I think by the time you guys, you've got a few more years, I hope you'll all be going on to do, you know, further education or training or whatever you want to do. I think if you push hard and you know what you want to do, I think you'll find it starts to get easier for you. Because previous generations had to fight for that, you know, because a lot of women, a lot of professions were closed to women. They couldn't even, you know, one woman who was speaking yesterday, she's older, in the 70s, she said when she got married, women couldn't even buy a house, get a loan, or their mortgage without their father or their husband signing the forms. Now that's changed. That was only in 1970s. That's not that long ago, is it? They couldn't do that. Imagine you couldn't buy a woman, even though you had a job and you could afford it. You couldn't buy a house unless your father or your husband signed it for you. So we've come a long way. But there's still a lot to do. And you're the generation, I think, that's going to really push it further. I'm very confident. I don't know, I'd like to put that question to the girls there, actually, but I can understand why. When I was younger, I think somebody asked me if I wanted to be a politician. I probably would have said no. Because the politician, the word politician, it's got sort of I don't know, it's not got a very good reputation, has it? People think politicians are all bad. I don't know if that's what people think. But actually, when you look at it, I was trying to explain this when I said about being a councillor. Because I used to get people, when I go and used to knock on the door and campaign at election time, and people say to me, oh, I'm not interested in politics. And I'd say, you're not interested in politics, so you're not interested in education, schools, social services, parks, leisure centres, roads. They say, oh no, I'm interested in that. The environment. I'm interested in that. I said, well, then you're interested in politics. Because it's only politics that can change those things. Because politicians are sitting in town halls making those decisions about how much to spend on schools, how much to spend on leisure services, on sports, on, roads, on nurseries, all the things I've talked about, social services, care services. These are all allocated. The government will allocate money to each council, and the council will sit down and decide what their priorities are, whether they want to open a youth club. That's politics. So if you're interested in any of those things, then you are interested in politics. If you're interested in the developing world, what's going on in other countries, because we give, and we're very good in this country, we do give a lot of money to other developing countries to help women, for example, in other poorer countries, to help them with education, with health. This is all politics as well. So if you're interested in any of that, that means you're interested in politics, and that's a good thing, because I think it's important that we're interested in what other people are. I used to say to women, if you're not there, sitting at the table where the decisions are taken, then they're taking decisions without you, about your life. They're making decisions, the men, but where are the women? That's why it's important for women to be involved.